we have Toon Boom Harmony, and I have just this animation that I made for that demonstration on the apply to all frames right there. This is a really short animation. It's just about, how long is it? 12 to 13 frames long, 13 frames long right there. And in order to export it, let's first go over how to export it if you want to just export directly out of Toon Boom Harmony and you want to upload it to YouTube straight out of there and have your audio connected to it and be good to go there. First, on this demonstration, I don't have audio in there right now, so let me just quickly import some sound into this thing. I have some stock audio right here. All right. So now there will be a little bit of sound coming through, and I'm just going to show you in this demonstration, I'm just going to export like a 13 frame animation out of this thing. So there's a few ways to do this. This way that I'm about to show, you just go up to File, and then Export, and then Movie right here. So File, Export, and Movie. And we click on that, and we'll get this menu. And with this menu, we have a few different options in here. So we have the video format, which should be QuickTime. We also have a ProRes option right there. I've in the past have done just QuickTime, and I've kind of done some tests on this. This produces really similar results between these two options, but I kind of prefer the QuickTime option here. The output file right here. So this is where you name your file, and you also browse to the location where you want it to export to. So you press this browse button right here, and remember I'm on a Mac, so this might look a little different on if you're on a PC here. But if I want to just save my rendered movie onto my desktop, I can just set my location right there, and I can name the file right here. So if you don't name it, it'll just come in as like a .mov, and I think it won't be enough characters for it to be like a workable file. So you just need to name it something in here. And remember, within this class, if we look at the syllabus, which is right here, we have sorry. Here we go. So under the deadlines, we have the way you can name your files right here. So you can just kind of copy and paste this to start with. So it's anim228, which is the name of our class, F22. And then you just put your last name and your first name, and then the name of the assignment. So for this case, you can just start with a copy and paste by pressing Command-C or Control-C. And then over here, going back to Toon Boom, Command-V. So again, that was in the syllabus right there. So my name is last name Dameron, first name Rogers, and then the assignment, is dance party. And so here it's just going on my desktop, so I'll just press save right there. So this is how you set the name and the location of where you're saving it to. Here you can export the range of frames of your animation. So this is going to be a real short one. It's just going to be 11 frames long. Resolution, you're just going to want it to be the same as, just keep it as is, the same resolution as what your canvas is, and make sure that your canvas, you are working in 1920 by 1080. Color space, there's some options here. And when I've tested it, there's not a huge difference, but I usually do the same as the working color space. I have done 709 before for some projects, but same as color space should be okay. And then finally, so again, there's not too much I'm changing here. I'm just setting the location, setting the frame, the export range. And here under movie options, just make sure that right here, codec of H.264 is going to be good. And then the audio, sometimes this jumps down to me to like in Toon Boom. I don't know if this does this in any of you, but it takes it down to like 22 kilohertz, which is not good. So if it looks like this, just jump this up to 4401 or 48 right here, and that'll be a nice audio resolution for your sound. And press OK. And then it should be ready to go. So I'll just press OK, and I'll export right there. I'll minimize Toon Boom, and then we got our file right here, and I can open it with QuickTime. Come on, there we go. So this is going to be really short. I'll turn the volume down. So you can hear that there's that little bit of sound coming through. If it might be coming through my speakers. And we got our QuickTime right here. So to turn in the project, this is named correctly right here. This is the right kind of format, and you can upload it to Canvas. And don't forget to also upload it to YouTube or Vimeo. There's a little bit of trouble with that on the on our animation test last week. So just be sure to kind of clean up kind of your formatting. So be sure to name it correctly. Points will get subtracted if you don't name it correctly, and just be sure to upload an MOV and then additionally a streaming link, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo, for the upload right there. So that's how you upload, or sorry, you export just straight out of Toon Boom Harmony right there. So does anyone have any questions on this one? And also, do y'all mind turning your cameras on, because it's a little hard for me to see kind of like what's going on with cameras off. I'd appreciate it if you all are able to kind of turn cameras on. So thank you. So that's exporting straight out of Toon Boom right there. You can see in this example right here, this is, you know, a nothing burger animation that I've made right here, because I was just trying to show the apply to all frames technique right here. But you can see it's named correctly, it's an MOV, and it'll kind of play correctly in our formats here. And so that's one way to export out of Toon Boom Harmony. And that's the best way if you've kind of done all your work in Toon Boom and you don't want to composite in After Effects. That's a good format to do it right there. And if you want to bring this animation into After Effects, there's actually a couple ways you can export it here. There's a more complicated way that I like to do, where you export like a PNG sequence with alpha channel. And I'm going to show that in a later demonstration, because it's a few extra steps, and I'm already trying to introduce After Effects, so I just don't want to have too much going on in this demonstration right here. And this is also a great way to export anyway. So if I want to export this and bring it into bringing into After Effects, it's going to be same first step, where I go up to File, Export, and then here I'm just going to go to SWF. And so the SWF format is a format left over from Adobe Flash back in the day, and it's kind of like an Illustrator file where the files are vectorized. And when something is vectorized, which is helpful, for instance, in this particular animation, because if you remember, I was using vector layers rather than bitmap layers, is it won't pixelate when you zoom way in on it. So I could take this animation right here with an SWF and scale it up by 1000%, and it still won't pixelate on my screen when you do an SWF. If you're using bitmap brushes and Toon Boom, just let me know in our one-on-one demonstration or one-on-one meetings, and I will show you a technique for exporting bitmaps into After Effects, which is a little more complicated, but just as good here. So File, Export, SWF, and you'll get a similar menu right here, where we're going to browse to the location that you want to save it as right here. So I'm just going to, initially, I'm going to save this on my desktop, and this kind of looks like a, I'll just call this test animation right here, 1. And you can set the frame range right here. We have the frame rate. And then the JPEG quality, let's see here. Yeah, this looks okay. This number might be a little lower for you. It might be like 70, and I would just move it up to 100 right here, and then just press OK. And hopefully you'll get this message that says SWF export was successful. And I'll press OK. And that's all there is to it. And I'll minimize it. And you can see right here, I have that QuickTime that I exported if you want to just export it straight out of Toon Boom. And then I have this SWF that'll be helpful for if you want to export it into After Effects. So looking at our project folders, this is the project folder I've been using for Toon Boom Harmony. You remember early on in the semester I was showing when you set up first create your project, it creates this directory for you where Toon Boom is referencing these files right here. And as you import things into Toon Boom, this automatically populates. So for instance, let me save Toon Boom real quick. So you remember I just imported that that stock audio into my project. And in this Toon Boom project, it automatically populates your directory. Oh, yes, do I see a hand up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was speaking a moment ago and I wasn't sure if you heard. When you asked a few moments ago about questions, when you were talking about the proper naming convention for files, and you said points off, does that apply to all assignments that we submit?
No, because I just in the past I didn't emphasize it enough, so that's on me. So on the kind of quizzes that we've done so far, I didn't subtract points for that. So just kind of in the future.
Okay. And do you is is your chat open by any chance?
Oh, yeah, let me pull that up here. Okay, let's see here.
So sorry. It's just sometimes if I don't want to interrupt and I have, you know.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I should have sorry, I'm a little rusty on the Zoom stuff here.
No worries.
But yeah, I've got my second computer here and I can see the chat now. Okay, was there, I see a bunch of chats here.
Yeah, it was just me asking the class if they could hear me when I was speaking over.
Oh, that's weird because yeah, I can hear you now, but I wasn't hearing you before for some reason.
No
Yeah,
worries.
we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Thanks.
Gotcha. Does anyone have any questions? So I kind of showed, yeah, the naming convention. You can find that in the syllabus, so you can just copy and paste it as a starting point.
Thank you.
And yeah, no points off on the last projects. That's a good question because I think I mentioned it, but I didn't make I didn't make enough of a point of it, to really, be draconian about the grading on that. And talked about exporting straight out of Toon Boom, and so what we're coming up on now is we're gonna begin to talk about After Effects here. I remember on the surveys that I gave out at the beginning of the semester, I believe it was kind of looking at the results as the majority of the class had kind of used After Effects a little bit, but it's kind of less than a year experience was most of the class, and then some of you have used it a bit more. Is that generally kind of a good feel for the amount of experience you all have with After Effects here? Cool. So I'm gonna do a deeper dive in After Effects as the semester goes on. I'm gonna keep adding and adding to it. And essentially what I'm gonna do here today is I'm gonna do kind of, this is going to be like an interesting combination tutorial here where I'm going to try to do the best job I can to just kind of introduce After Effects for the people it's new to. And then I'm going to have like a fun kind of more complicated technique for people who have used After Effects a lot, who that might be helpful for this particular project. So for that second part, if it kind of goes over your head a little bit, don't stress about it. I'm just kind of throwing it out there for anyone who's kind of used After Effects a lot. So on Toon Boom, it automatically populates a folder like this. And, Toon Boom is sourcing the files that are in this directory. And After Effects works almost the same way, except for it's up to us to make the project directory and make these folders, where Toon Boom just makes it for you automatically. That's the difference here. So for compositing in After Effects, what you'd want to do is make a new folder right here, and I would call it intro, or we can call it Dance Party After Effects. And you can have this as a separate folder right here from your Toon Boom directory, or if you want to, if you're worried about like files getting a little confusing with having multiple directories, you could hypothetically, it shouldn't interfere with Toon Boom, if I'm not mistaken, to just have your After Effects project in here with the rest of your stuff. So that way your entire dance party project can just be contained in one folder right here. So you can have your After Effects project separate, or you can kind of put it into your Toon Boom project if you like. I'm going to keep it separate here just so that things stay visually clear during this demonstration here. So when you're working in After Effects, it's kind of up to you to put your files in here. And usually when I'm working in After Effects, I'm making my own, let's see here. When you're working in After Effects, a lot of times I'm making folders in here. So I'll make one that's called like footage, if I can spell it right. One called audio. And one called stills. That's usually kind of my starting point when I'm working in After Effects. This dance party project is going to be a lot more simple, right? You're not going to have too many. It's a 5 to 10 second animation. So in this particular example, it's probably not super important to set all that stuff up. In the future, it will be. But for this one, let's just make an After Effects folder right here. And I have my audio file, so I'll just drag that in. I have this still image that I'm going to use as my background for the animation right there, that I'll import in. And then I have my SWF file that I just exported out of Toon Boom right here. So I'll import that in. So I just have my Dance Party After Effects folder right here. I have my SWF animation, my audio, and then my background image right here. And so let's use After Effects to composite this and color correct it. So I'm going to open up After Effects on my computer. Oops, let's see here. Okay. So when you open up After Effects, it should look something like this. And just as a reminder for anyone who's kind of new to After Effects, I'm going to go over the interface a little bit, just so I don't lose anybody. And we'll kind of dive deeper into all this stuff down the road here. So your interface should look something like this when you open up After Effects. Within all Adobe programs, you can customize the arrangement of your interface. So if yours looks different, there's like these different presets for the layout right here. And you can also, if you click on these double arrows, there's more options, and you can even make your own custom interface arrangements in here. I just downloaded this 2022 After Effects, so my old presets are not in there right now, but I'm on default right now. And so right here, we have what's called the project folder. And this is going to be really similar to anyone who's used Premiere as well. But those files that I imported into the project folder, so our SWF, the audio file in the background still, are all going to get imported into here. So this is where you manage your assets in your files in After Effects. Down here is your timeline, where we're going to see the timeline just like Toon Boom, and have layers just like Toon Boom, all that. And I'll kind of get into some of the details of the timeline down here. Right here is where we're going to create a new composition. And so that's where we're going to see the visuals of our animation right here. And so in After Effects, that's called a composition. And you can have multiple compositions going on at the same time in your projects in After Effects. Then over here, we have all these little tabs. And an important one right here is the preview tab. So this is the tab if you want to play back your video, you look for the preview tab right here. If you're not seeing it over here, and this is the case for every window that's in After Effects, you can just go up to Window, and find preview right there. So any of these windows that I'm mentioning right now, if you don't see them in your interface, just go up to Windows and find them over here, and they'll be there. And another one that I'm going to bring up here is the effects and presets right here. I'm going to show something called the slider preset for the more advanced thing here down the road, but you can see After Effects, you can apply all kinds of effects for doing color correction or animation within After Effects. And After Effects is a pretty versatile program, so you can use it down the road for motion graphics. I find it to be really useful for compositing animations like what we're about to do today. Can also do like visual effects or like short editing. It's a pretty versatile program here. And so this is the basic interface. So to get things started, I'm going to start with the project window right here. And this is where I'm going to import my assets into my project. And I think I can just select this stuff and drag it in, but I usually just go up to File and then Import and then File right there in After Effects. So File, Import, File. Oops. And here I've got Dance Party After Effects. That's the name of my After Effects project. And I have my 3 files right here. So I'll just hold Shift, import them all in. And you can see they show up in my project directory right here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to save my After Effects project. So I'll just go to File, Save As, and save it. And I'm just going to save it into the Dance Party After Effects project folder. So make sure that it goes into that same folder that we just created. So again, this was on the desktop, Dance Party After Effects, and then I'll just call this Dance Party Composite version 1 right there. And so now when I go into that folder, it should look something like this. And again, this works for this project because this is just a 5 to 10 second really simple animation. But down the road, I'm going to try to get you all to make a bunch, like a full-blown directory in here, just like what we have in Toon Boom, where we have these folders, you know, for all your assets to go into here. So first thing I want to mention with After Effects is with the project directory, it is the animations that we create. It's sourcing these files right here. So let's say, for instance, so I'll kind of demonstrate that in a little bit here. I'll just kind of keep it moving just for another moment here. So for this animation, I have my assets right here. So I have the still image I'm going to use as my background. I have my animation, and then I have the audio right there. And the first thing I need to do is make a new composition. So to make a new timeline to work in. So you can do that by pressing this big button right here. Or you can go up to composition and the new composition right there to make a new composition. And right here, this window will come up and it's already set to a good setting right here. You can see there's a lot of presets right here. So you can just go down to, you can see there's HD TV 1080 25. So that's 25 frames per second, which isn't quite right. But go down to HD TV 1080. And with HD TV 1080, we have, if you're working in an HD format, which I think most of you are, it'll be 1920 by 1080 pixels right here. And then you definitely want square pixels, so just don't mess with that. 24 frames per second is good. And then you can see right here, we set the duration of our animation. So right now it's going to be 30 seconds long. And you're going to want yours to be shorter, but I'm actually going to keep mine at 30 just so I can demonstrate a little technique I'm about to show here. And so here you can name it. So I'll call it Dance Party Main Comp right there and press OK. And so you can see the composition shows up in my project directory, but now I also have a black screen right here, an empty screen where my animation is going to take place right here. So first thing I want to do is I want to just take my animation that I created, which in my case is like the simplest animation ever. It's just 3 frames of a, you know, like a bean thing kind of moving from left to right here. And so to bring this into our HD composition right here, all I need to do is just click it and then just drag it right here. into the timeline. And then it comes right in right there. And so looking at the timeline, you can see it's 30 seconds long right here. You can also see the time code right here on it. You can zoom in and out just using these bars right here if you like. So just dragging this bar from the small mountain. I can also click on the small mountain to zoom out, click on it to zoom in right here, or just drag the bar. And so you can see my animation is about 12 frames long right there, so half a second. And so we're going to go in more into some of these settings down here in a little bit. But let's look at this window for just a moment. So we have our composition view. And what these two tabs are is if I go right here to fit, you can see in After Effects, I can shrink my windows to be as small or large as I want. So when you have this set to fit right there, it'll automatically adjust to whatever size your composition is right here. If you set it to something like 400%, you're zooming in on your composition. And if you zoom in too much, you can use the mouse wheel to zoom back out, or you can press go back to fit. And you can also use your mouse wheel to zoom in rather than using this tab. And if you hold space bar, you get this hand tool and you can kind of move around and kind of zoom in on different areas right here. So that's what that is. This is just the resolution that it plays back. So if your computer is slowing down a whole lot and is having trouble catching up with your scene, you can just bring this down to a quarter resolution, and you might be able to see this on the zoom as this starts to pixelate a whole lot. And so it just makes it so it renders quicker by setting it to a quarter, but the resolution goes way down. So I'll set it back to full right there, and it goes back up to full resolution. I'll tab up to fit right there, and it'll fit this back to the screen. We have a bunch of buttons here that I'll go over at one point here, but I think the main one to pay attention to just for today, because I kind of want to layer in this information for you all a little bit, is this button right here, which toggles on and off the alpha channel. So with the SWF, as long as you have your color card turned off when you export it, it should export with an alpha channel, or sorry, with a transparent background. And one way to check if you have a transparent background in After Effects is this checkerboard button right here, and it's called Toggle Transparency Grid. And so that way I can just kind of see what's behind, or make sure that there's nothing behind this SWF that I just exported. So a fun thing with After Effects here is you can see my animation is 12 frames long. So if I go over to the preview tab, and let's just make sure that this is selected. It might be grayed out at first, and if it is, just click into the timeline. And just to preview it, I'll just press this play button. You can see right here that if this is blue right here, that means that sound will be on. There's no sound right now in my project. And this is, if you turn this off, it'll just only preview the sound. So just make sure both of those are blue. And we got the play, and then we have the back to the first frame to the last frame right there. Those are the main buttons right here. So I'll press play. And so you can see that animation is really quick, and then it's off screen right here. And and we started over right there. So let's say that you've created an animation that loops that's only 12 frames long and you want it to loop. I'll show you the wrong way to do this first. I mean, both of these are technically the right way, but I'll show you the easy way second here. So let's say that this isn't really a looping animation, but let's say you want it to loop, is you can press Command D to duplicate it. I believe I'm so used to shortcuts. I think there's a duplicate option as well in here. Maybe it's edit and then duplicate right there. So Command D, and then you can hold Shift, and it's really important that you hold Shift and it'll snap it right here. So Command D, hold Shift, snap, Command D, hold Shift, snap. But if you have an animation that you want to loop for a long time, this can become a little cumbersome right here. But so you can see you can kind of set a loop going by doing that. So an easier way to set that loop going is I have my SWF right here, and I just make sure that it's selected in my project directory right here. And there's this little button right here, this interpret footage right there. And so if I click on this interpret footage button, this screen will come up, and this is really helpful if you want to change the frame rate of an animation or something like that. But the only thing you need to worry about here, and you can also turn off and on your alpha channel in here. But the important thing I want to look at right here is the loop right here. So right now it's set to, the footage is set to loop just one time before it stops playing, right? So it's set to 1 by default. So when I play it, it just stops after that one loop. But if I select it right here, and then I press this button to go to the interpret footage, I can type in like, 120, times right here. And what that does is you can see where this was just black before. I'll press Command Z to undo it. It filled in like as in a light green, like that layer. So let me just do this one more time. Right here, I'll type in 100. So now it's set, so it can loop 100 times. And to extend my animation out, I can just drag right here. So I can click right here and drag it out. And so now my 12 frame animation can now be 30 seconds long or even longer right there. So you can kind of set it to loop infinitely without like duplicating your layers like 1,000 times and just dealing with a really cumbersome composition right there. So that's a really helpful tip right there for people with looping animations right here. So one thing I would like to see in your dance party animations is some form of a background component within your scene. And how detailed or simple your background is, it kind of depends on the style of your animation. But I'd like to see some kind of background so we can see some sort of give your character some gravity, right? Some kind of floor plane or something to be on. So let's move on to bringing in the background right here. So I just downloaded this image from online. This is a really nicely painted digital background. You don't need to do something this complicated for this assignment, but this is just, what I'm using here. So it's a JPEG. And you remember I brought this JPEG into my dance party After Effects project. So it's right here sitting with my SWF animation, my audio file, and then my After Effects file right there. And all I need to do, same thing, is I just need to click it and then drag it below my animation right here, and it'll show up right there. You can see if I drag it above it, it'll show on top of my animation. And so you need it to be on the layer below so that it shows below. And you can see it's pretty small in my frame right now. So if you press this tab right here, and then press this tab right here, you get these attributes down here where you can change the position, the scale, the rotation, and the opacity, as well as the anchor point of any layer. And there's different shortcuts you can do for this. The shortcut to open the whole thing like this is U, I believe, or is it T? No, I'm forgetting because I usually use the individual ones for position, scale, rotate, etc. right there. But you can see right here, if I want to scale this up, I just can click. There's this link button. So that links the width and the height together, which you're typically gonna want if you want things to stay in proportion. And all I need to do is just click where it says 100 and then drag from left to right, and it'll scale up right there. Or I can type this in numerically as 160 right there, and it'll scale up to the edges of my composition right there. I just did the mouse wheel to kind of zoom out of my composition a little bit so I could see it a little bit better, the edges. And so that's how you can scale and reposition a background component in here. If you want to rename your files, you can just press, hover your mouse over this and press return, and I can name it something like background right here. So return is the shortcut to rename anything in here. And so this brings me to a really important point right here. So I'm going to save my project right now. And so you can see I have my animation and I have it set to loop for as long as I want it to. And then I have my background right there. My background's not moving yet. And let's see here. So one thing that's really important about After Effects is I made my project folder, and just to leave your files in that project folder and not to delete them or mess with them. So let's say I have my background image right here and it gets moved. So I'm just going to move it. Whoops. I'm going to, and you also don't want to rename it in here. So once it's named, just leave it as whatever name it is. Don't move it. Don't rename it. but I'll move it out here. And so it's now out of my After Effects project directory. And so now in After Effects, I get this error message right here. This is a file could not be found right here. And so whereas before we would have been able to see that image in the background when I press OK. Next time I reopen After Effects, it's gotten smarter about this, but next time I reopen After Effects, that file will be missing here. So let me just make a new After Effects project. And let's say that I try to open it up again the next day. I'll get that error message saying the file's missing. And now you'll get this kind of ugly barcode thing saying that the file's missing. So just be sure not to move your files. If this does happen to you, you can replace it. So the best way to do that is you right click and let's see here, go to replace footage and then file right there. So if you're ever missing a file in After Effects and you're trying to relocate it, right click, go to replace footage and file, and try to find it on your desktop right here. So I'll just find it right there and press open, and then it'll find it again right there. But generally just try really hard just to keep it in that project directory folder right there. And it might lose it again, we'll see. But that's a super important thing in After Effects, and it's just, stay organized, keep your projects going that way. So okay, we're back again. So you can see I have my background right here, and then I have my animation in front of it. And then I can also bring in things like my audio file right here. And so this is just a stock audio file that I have downloaded so that YouTube wouldn't flag it. With the audio files, you can change the levels of it if it's too loud. So it's set at 0 dBs. If I want it to be a little less loud, I can do -10 dBs or something like that. And now when I press play, I've got music going with my background and then my foreground right there. And there's a few different ways that you can animate your backgrounds and things like that in After Effects here. So the most fundamental way to animate, let's just say that I want my background to just be scaling up here, is I'll have my background layer right here. I'll press the arrow again. And what these little buttons right here are that look like a little stopwatch, it's a keyframe button. So I can press, let's say that I want at 2 seconds in, I want the scale to be at 160, and I just press, I just press the stopwatch right here next to scale. That creates a keyframe. Now let's go to 3 seconds right here. And I can just scale it just by changing the scale like that. So I'll change it down to 82, and you can see it automatically generates a second keyframe right there. And so now it's animating smaller. And if I want it to scale back up, I can just bring it to the point where I want it to start scaling back up again. And it's this button right here. So that's add or remove a keyframe at the current time. And so what I want to do is I want to add another keyframe at the current time. And let's say I want to scale it back up to 160, is I'll go to the point where I want it to be back at 160. So I'll bring my cursor to that point and then type in 160 right here. And now it's zooming in, or sorry, zooming out. And then zooming back in right there. We can do ease ins and ease outs in After Effects, and the graph editor in After Effects is a little different than what you might have experienced using if you've used 3D software before, or if you've used Toon Boom's ease in and ease outs. It's a little clunkier in my opinion, but you get used to it. So if I want to ease that in and ease that out, because right now it's just a linear move, right? It's just going at a constant velocity right there. And so to give that ease in and ease outs, you just select the keyframes right here. And it's this button right here. It's called the graph editor. And you can see it might look like this for you at first. And there's these different modes you can do. You can see right here that all of these attributes are highlighted gray right now. So I'm seeing the graph editor for the position, the scale, and the rotation all at the same time, which is a little overwhelming. So let's see if I can just get it for scale right there. So I just selected scale, and you can see the graph editor right here, and you can see it's linear right there. And there's a bunch of ways that we can change this so that it eases in and eases out. But first way I'd like to start with is I just select, so this is our starting point right here. If I want it to ease out of that, I can press the ease out button right here. And if I wanted to ease in, I can select this keyframe right here and then ease it in. So you can see, and I can grab these handles so I can kind of change the velocity at which this is easing in and easing out right here. And I can do the same. So this is what a linear move looks like, and this is an ease out and ease in right here. So let me just change these bars a little bit, and I will play it back so we can see it first. This is one with ease, and then this is one that's linear. Right, so the linear kind of eases into it a little bit. And so you can also change the timing of this as well by selecting multiple keyframes like this. So I'm just dragging and selecting right here. And I can extend it out. And so I can have it kind of happen slower here. And to exit the graph editor mode, you just press that button right there, and we're out. And let's say that I want, this is the animation I want. This is obviously not a great animation right now, but to export out of After Effects, this gray bar right here is how you set your range that you're going to export out of right here. So right now, if I were to go to export this, it would stop exporting at 6 frames right there, or sorry, at 6 seconds. And that would be the range at which this animation would export right there. And you can see it loops back right there at that bar right there. So that's how you can set your range right there within the animation. So continuing to just introduce you to the idea of After Effects, I can also delete my keyframes in here. So let's say that I decide I don't like that animation. I can just select those keyframes just by dragging and selecting right there and pressing delete. And I can just finally delete this keyframe right here, and it'll be static again. If you remember, so this is a helpful thing. I mentioned that an SWF file is like a vector file where you can scale it up infinitely and it won't rasterize. But I'm going to scale this up to like 400%, and I'll need to go find it again here just by repositioning it. And it should be pixelated. So you can see in the screen, I said that it was vector and it's pixelated right there. And that's because there's just one button that I need to press in After Effects to get this so that it doesn't rasterize like that. And it's this, there's this little star button this here in the timeline right here. And if I click it, you can see right there that that SWF file becomes vectorized again right there. And so that's the same if you're importing like Illustrator files into After Effects as well. So again, I have my test animation SWF right here. I turn it off, it's pixelated, turn it on, and it's clean again right here. And so if so that's again with an SWF, you can scale your characters up as long as they're vectorized drawing layers up as much as you want right here. Looking through the rest of this, is pretty straightforward. Right here we have the eye buttons, which turns on and off the visibility of a layer right here. So if I want to turn off the visibility of my background, I can just press this eye button and it'll turn off. If I want to turn off the sound of this audio file, that's what this is. So I can just mute it right there, and there's no sound coming out of it now. Right here, we'll get into this button down the road. But it's, well, I guess I could just go ahead and say it's the solo button. So if you want to solo something, you can solo it right here. And then finally, this is the lock button, which we also have in Toon Boom, which makes it so that you can't adjust any of these layers, which can be really helpful if you have an animation that you like, or sorry, a component that you like and you don't want to change it by mistake, you can just press this lock button and kind of keep it safe right there. And let's see here. So a great thing about After Effects is, I'll bring this back to 100 and reposition it right here. You can also animate the position of things. So I animated the scale of the background, but you can also animate the position of it. So if I want to take my animation right here and move it from left to right, so I have my test animation right there. I can press the position keyframe right there, creates a keyframe, drag to the spot where you want it to go. And then I can either press this button to create a second keyframe, or I can just simply move it. And if you hold shift, it'll move directly left to right, right there. So you can either grab it and move it in any direction, or you can hold shift and it'll lock it, dragging either left or right. Or if you hold shift and drag up and down, it'll just bring it straight up and down right there. And so now I have a keyframe. It's hard to tell with this character, but you can see that it's starting to kind of move from screen left to screen right, right there. And again, if I want to ease that in and ease that out or adjust them, I can go into the graph editor right here and change my ease in and ease outs by pressing these two buttons right here at the edge, and that's the graph editor right there. So I'll create an ease there and then an ease here. So now it'll be slow, then it'll speed up a little bit, and then it'll kind of slow back down, which is a little hard to tell because the thing's moving right there. One thing to be really careful to do in After Effects is hold shift and snap to your keyframes. Because one thing that'll happen a lot is if you don't hold shift, you'll try to make an adjustment to a keyframe right here. And if I zoom in on this, you'll see two keyframes got put like right next to each other, one frame next to the other. And that can cause some pretty bad jumps to happen. So again, that's not too drastic. See if I can get that to be a little worse. But that's something to be a little careful of. It's just to be sure to hold shift and make sure that you snap onto the keyframe and then zoom in on it and make sure that you're right on the keyframe before you start adjusting it right there. Let's see here. Last thing for today on After Effects is if you want to make, this can be really helpful for kind of bringing your background and your animation together, but you can also do color correction on stuff. So let's say that I want to change the color of my character right here, or just do some color correction just so that the background and the foreground work together better, is I can go up to, I can select that layer right here and go to effects. And you can see we have all these effects right here. And one thing that's nice about After Effects is you can get all these plugins going. And it can be, you can do a lot in here. But let's just say I want to do color correction and I just want to change the brightness and contrast. I can do like, I can just do plain brightness and contrast, but there's some other good ones like curves and levels right here. I'll do curves just to show this. And so you can see with my test animation right here, I have my effects up here. And with the curves, so if we look at the character in the foreground, and I'll just solo the character in the foreground, I can change. So this is the way this works is we have this gray bar is the RGB. And down here are the darks. Here are the mids and here. And if I want the brights to be brighter up here, you can pull that up. So that's like an S curve right there. This will be a little bit better if I do this with the background. So let me just do the background and do that same thing. So effect and curves. So you can see I can make the darks darker right there. I can bring the mids neutral, or I can make the mids darker or brighter, or I can make the brights brighter or darker right there. So there's all kinds of color correction you can do. So that's curves. There's another one that's simpler where it's just brightness and contrast. So it's color correction and then brightness and contrast right here. And so here I can make the brights brighter, the contrast more severe right there, or I can kind of bring it down. And there's all kinds, it's good just to experiment with this. So you can do things like photo filters, adjust your levels. You can change the hue even. So if you go to effects, color correction, and you can change the hue and saturation. So I have like this hue slider, so I can kind of change it to all kinds of different colors right here with the hue slider. And you can even do more advanced color correction, like what you would do in a DaVinci or something like that in this program. And so I can see I'm running low on time here. So there's a more complicated thing I wanted to throw out today, but I think it's good just to kind of keep this as simple as possible here today. And so when it's time to export out of After Effects, you're going to need to have Media Encoder turned on in order to export this properly. And so I'm just going to give this 1 second to kind of get ramped up in the background. Does anyone have any questions about After Effects right now?
Nope, no questions.
Okay, y'all doing okay? So one thing, so in the future, one thing we're going to go over a lot is how to do multiplanar animations in After Effects. And so you can set up 3D cameras and set up some complicated camera moves in After Effects. So, and there's really some good techniques for that, like handheld camera look, you know, where your camera has like a little bit of movement to it, and some fun stuff like that. So we will get into that in future classes here. But so when it's time to export your After Effects project, sorry, Media Encoder is kind of taking a while for me to get booted here. So once a Media Encoder gets going, what you're going to do is you're going to go up to Composition, and then you're going to go to Add to Media Encoder queue right here to export your animation here. So just make sure that your composition is kind of selected in your timeline, and make sure this bar right here at the top is set to the duration that you want your animation to be. And you can see I have my audio, my background, and then my animation right here, and you can add color correction to these layers individually. And I'll show a few more advanced ways you can do color correction down the road. But there's a lot of fun stuff you can do here as well. Like you can add glows and things like that. So if you want your character to have like a little bit of like an organic light thing happening, that this can be useful for that. And so again, for the final export, just go up to Composition, add to Media Encoder queue right here. And it's going to look like nothing happened in here. And give it a second. So it usually takes just a minute for this to come up. But if you go over to the Media Encoder queue right here, and what Media Encoder is it's just After Effects, kind of like a secondary program that helps you export your movies, so your edits and your animations, into formats that are compatible with where you're trying to send it right here. So you can see right here that our project shows up right here, or an export shows up right here. And right now it's set to export, it's just a plain old H.264. And you can set the location right here. If we click on this, it'll just take 1 second while the dynamic link connection kind of goes through. But you can see we get a ton of options right here in terms of how you export it. And one thing that's nice here is, and again, I just got this by clicking on this tab right here. So the middle tab is, if we go, H.264 is good. But if we click this open, you can see we have all these options down here. And so let's say you want to export into Vimeo at 1080 full resolution right here. That is a format that works really well with Vimeo right there. And so same with YouTube, is if you go down to YouTube at 1080 right there. And so you have some really nice presets in here that you can choose between. And so let's say that we're going to upload this to YouTube, you can just click right there. And there's a few settings that I like to fiddle with in here, but I'm going to leave it for this class. And so you'll just press OK. And then we'll click in here to name the file and set the location. So I'm just going to put this right onto my desktop and call this YouTube. Even though remember we want to name the project this, right? Anim 228 F22. Here, I'll just go ahead and do it. Dameron Rogers. And for the assignment, I'm just going to call this YouTube compression just so that we can differentiate here. And I will put this just plainly onto my desktop here and save it. And so we have the format selected right there, just again by clicking in here, and then the second tab, bringing it down to the preset that you want. Vimeo 1080p is a really good one, generally speaking, but I chose YouTube right there. And then here you click on it, you set the location and name your file right there. Then when you're ready to render it, you just press this play button up here, and you can see it renders it out right there. And it's done thinking about it. And I'll minimize it right here. And in the end, this is the animation that I kicked out of Toon Boom. And then this is the animation that I kicked out of After Effects right there. And I'll open this with QuickTime. And we have our animation right here. And so, yeah, that's it. And this is a format that'll work well with YouTube if you're uploading it there. And it should be a pretty good file size as well for uploading it to Canvas. So if I right click and go to Get Info right here, we can see that this is only about 4 megabytes right there, which is great. You know, it's a small file right there. Some of these MP4 formats are a really nice combination of